what's up, y'all? Welcome to the Endless TBR. My name is Christian, and this is my YouTube channel where I love to talk about all things book related in my life. Thank you so much for being here on another beautiful day. As you can see, I've got my very big, very comfy reading hoodie on. I was sitting in my living room catching up on some reads when I had an idea to make this YouTube video that talks about how I pick the books that I want to read next. And I was inspired to make a video like this based off of a recent conversation I had with a friend of mine. She was talking to me about how she has difficulty figuring out what book to read next. There's like this problem of over selection where there's so many books out there, and when she finishes a book, there's just a million different things that she wants to read, and she never knows what to pick next. And she noticed that I don't have that problem. I always have like my next two, three, four books on deck ready to read. Actually, behind the camera here, I have a whole shelf that is just dedicated to like my TBR for the next like 3 to 4 months. I have it roughly loosely planned out through the end of January 2026 of a bunch of books I want to read. Obviously that can change. I might have whims where I want to take one off, replace it with another. But for the most part, I have like a rough structure of what books I want to read for the next 4 months or so. And I was talking to my friend about that, and she was just like, "How do you do it? Like, what techniques do you use to figure out like, weed through all of the books to figure out which ones you want to read next?" And I was able to come up with five different like ideas or techniques about how I select what books I want to read next, and I decided to make this video. If I figured if I can help like one or two people out there get over like a reading slump or get some inspiration to read a new book, then figured it's a worthwhile video to make. So without further ado, let's get into it. Like I said, I have five different, I'll call them like techniques. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but techniques. And technique number one is to set some major reading goals for yourself. So I'll give you an example of mine. Back at the beginning of 2024, when I really got into reading again as an adult, I set three major reading goals for myself. And those goals are to read one, every Stephen King book, two, read every Star Wars book in the new canon, and then three, read every Dune book. Not just the ones by Frank Herbert, but also the spin off novels by Brian Herbert, his son, and Kevin J. Anderson. So that expands it from like six Dune books to like 27 or something like that. And I made those selections based off of things that I had read and I loved. I'm really into Star Wars, and so I wanted to read all of the new canon Star Wars books ever since Disney bought it. I love the Dune movies and the first couple Dune books by Frank Herbert, so I wanted to read all of those. And I really love Stephen King. I wanted to read all of his books as well. And it's really nice having those three like major reading goals in the background. I'm very aware that I'm going to be working on all of those for probably many years to come, unless I just go crazy and I just decide to read 3, 4, 5 months straight of nothing but Stephen King. I will be slowly chipping away at these for years. But it's really nice because if I do get into one of those corners or like into one of those slumps where I'm not exactly sure what I want to read next, I immediately default back to one of those major reading goals. I'm like, let me throw a Stephen King book in here. Let me throw a Dune book in here. Let me throw a Star Wars book in there. And I think it could be really helpful if you pick a goal like that as well. And it can be anything you want. It can be any author, if you want to chip away at their entire collection of stories. It could be one series, like maybe The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, or maybe you want to read every Brandon Sanderson novel. There's so many great authors out there. So just pick one that you really, really like, and you can slowly start to chip away at that as kind of like a background goal. It doesn't need to be every book I read for the next 3 months needs to be Brandon Sanderson. It can just be, hey, let me read one this month, maybe skip it the next month, read one this month, but at least it gives you something consistent to come back to. So that is technique number one. Technique number two is one that I'm probably pretty out of date on. Maybe a lot of people that have been reading for a long time already know all of this. But for me, I didn't discover this until last year, and that is an app called Goodreads. I had never used Goodreads before. I'm aware it's been around for like well over a decade at this point. But last year, when I started getting into reading, my fiance was like, "Hey, you should use this app." And I had never heard of it before. But she's like, yeah, you can track what you're reading. You can give it star reviews. You can write reviews about it. You can have friends and you can see what they're reading. You can make yearly challenges for yourself and check your progress. And it blew my mind. I thought it was the coolest thing of all time. being able to have this app where I can track what I'm reading. And it's such a simple idea, but if I wasn't aware of it, maybe some other people aren't aware of it too. And there's multiple apps that you can use for something like that. There's one of my good friends uses Fable. Instead, she loves Fable. So it doesn't have to be Goodreads, but any of these apps where you can track what you're reading, I highly recommend using because it's a really great tool to find your next book that you want to read. As I'm scrolling through it, I can see what my friends are currently reading. I can see when they review something really highly. There's a section that gives you new releases in genres that you like. I follow a lot of like the horror genre and the fantasy genre, so it gives me new releases, and it's really easy to just click on the book. Look at the cover art, read the description, see how well it's rated, see what other people have to say, and it's exposed me to a lot of books that I probably would have never seen otherwise. Because for me, it's just walking through my local Books a Million and kind of seeing what pops out at me on the shelf, and I'm sure I miss a ton of great books. So Goodreads is just another way that you can find those diamonds in the rough that you might not have seen otherwise. And you can create a want to read shelf, which mine at this point is well over 50 books of these books that I see and I think they look cool, and I add them to this bookshelf. And same thing, if I'm in that corner, I don't know what to read next, I'll go into my want to read shelf, just scroll through it, find something, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember reading about that book. I'm going to add that one to this month because that seems like something that I want to read right now. It's really popping out at me. So that is technique number two: is utilize those reading apps. They are awesome if you have not done so yet. So that is my first two techniques. Moving on to technique number three. This is one that I never thought I would have recommended if you had asked me a couple months ago. Never seemed like my type of thing, but that is to join a book club. So recently, within the last few months, I ended up starting a book club with myself, my fiance, and two really good friends of ours. And we just, we always like to talk about what books we were reading and stuff like that. So we decided to just make this little four-person book club, and each month one of us picks a book and everybody else has to read it. So this month my fiance picked a book called Dry Hard by Nick Spalding, and the other three of us had to read it. Last month I picked the Terror by Dan Simmons. We all had to read it, and it's been really really cool because, like, just using this month as an example, I am not a comedy reader. I do not read comedies, but my fiance loves reading comedy, and so she recommended this comedy book called Dry Hard, and I really liked it. And now I have all of Nick Spalding's books downloaded as audiobooks onto my phone, and I plan on going through his entire collection. So it's a great way to expose yourself to different books and different genres that you might never have been exposed to before. Like, I know one of my friends in my book club, she loves romance novels. I'm not a romance novel person. I'm sure she's probably going to pick one at some point, and I'm going to read it. And who knows, maybe I'll really enjoy it. And romance novels will become a new passion of mine. I doubt it, but you never know. So that's what I would say: is join a book club. Find some friends, and it doesn't have to be like, I had this preconceived notion that a book club had to be like this massive thing with like dozens and dozens of people, and you had to sit around and talk about like the intricacies of the novels and sip tea and stuff like that. But no, it's just the four of us. It's super casual. I'd recommend having at least three people. I'd say that's a good minimum for your book club. And all we do is at the end of the month we get together, we go out to eat somewhere, or we go over to someone's house. We talk about what we liked, what we didn't like about the book, and then we move on to the next one. And it's been a lot of fun, and I can see that I'm going to be exposed to a lot of books that I would have never been exposed to otherwise. So that is advice number three: is to think about joining a book club with your friends and family, whoever you got in your life. Number four, this is going to be one that might seem a little weird, but bear with me. Number four is to watch a lot of movies. So I have Regal Unlimited. That's the subscription that you can pay for with the Regal theater chain, and you pay like 25 bucks a month, and it's all you can see movies as much as you want. And I go to the movies at least once a week with my fiance, sometimes two or three times a week. Like, we just watch everything that comes into theaters. And the thing that I didn't realize, but I'm starting to realize, is that so many movies are based off of books, because I will see this movie that I would have never seen in the first place with my unlimited subscription. I'll think it's the coolest thing. I'll look up more about it on, IMDb or on Wikipedia, and I'll find out it's based off of a book. And then I immediately go over to Goodreads and I'm like, I'm going to add that to my want to read because that movie was awesome. I want to learn more about it. And so I'm going to add it to my want to read bookshelf. And so I think if you go out and you expose yourself to more movies, if you find ones that you really like, I think there's a really solid chance that you'll find that that was based off of or inspired by a book of some kind. And even if you don't go see a lot of new movies, but just make a list of like your 15 to 20 like favorite movies of all time and you go down that list and research them, I'll bet you a lot of them were based off of books as well. And then, maybe you'll see like, whoa, I never knew this was based off of a book. I want to go read it now because I love the movie so much. A book is like, a 10-hour movie. You're going to get a lot more character work, a lot more backstory, more world building, and to expose yourself to that world. And you might even, find that it's part of a bigger series, and then you have a bunch of books to read. So that is another piece of advice I have: is to watch a lot of movies, find movies that you love, and then find if they're based off of a book, and then go read them. A great example that I have too, I mentioned in a video of mine a couple months before, is one of my favorite movie franchises is Blade Runner. I love the OG Blade Runner. I love Blade Runner 2049 is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I never knew that Blade Runner was based off of a book. But the other day, I was at home watching Blade Runner, and I thought to myself, I said, you know what? I'm just going to Google it because I want to see if there's any tie-in novels. Not even knowing if it's based off of a book. I just want to see if there's any like tie-in fiction so I could get more Blade Runner in my life. And then lo and behold, I find out that it's based off of a book by Philip K. Dick. So the next day, I ran out to Books a Million, picked up Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the book that it's based off of, and I read it in like 24 hours, and I absolutely loved it. So make a list of those movies, go see more movies, find the ones that you love, and then figure out if they're based off of books. And I guarantee you'll have a lot more things that you'll have on your reading shelf. And then my final piece of advice, number 5, and this one sounds super simple, but I think it's actually the most important on this list, and that is to just give into your urges. So, like I said earlier, I have this bookshelf behind me and it's got dozens of books that I plan to read over the next 4 months. And while I do plan to roughly stick to that, I also know that there's going to be times where I look at that bookshelf and I'm like, never mind, I don't want to read this one. I want to read this one instead. Or maybe I'm in the middle of a month and I've already created my video here and my list of the books that I want to read, and then I look at my bookshelf and there's that book that's been sitting there for months and months or years and years that I've just never read, and I look at it and I'm like, I want to read that right now. And I think you absolutely should. You should, grab that book and start reading it. Because when you have that urge to read it, I think you should just give into it absolutely. And I'm the kind of person where I only like to read one book at a time if I can help it. But if I get that urge to start another book, I will read two books at the same time because I always want to give into that urge because there's something about that story or that book. It could just be the cover of that book that I look at and I'm like, this looks really, really cool. But in that moment, I just have that urge to start reading it and I always want to give into it. And I would recommend you do the same thing. If you ever get that urge, like for whatever reason, I don't think you should fight it. If you're like that type of person that likes to meticulously plan everything out and you're like, oh, I don't want to start reading that because that's going to mess up my flow. I say, screw the flow, go with that thing that is speaking to you in that moment. You can always stop reading it if it's not vibing with you. But I think giving into those urges is very important because for me, reading is supposed to be a fun, calming hobby that you vibe, you lay back on the sofa, you have a good time, you get lost in the story, and so whatever gets you into that flow is what you should go with. So that is technique number 5. I know that was kind of like that was kind of wishy-washy, but hopefully you know what I mean there. If you see a book that you want to read, just start reading it. Don't question it. Just go for it. So those are my 5 techniques. That's how I personally pick what books I want to read next. I have my major reading goals. I have my Goodreads TBR shelf. I have my book club, which guarantees one book a month that I'll have to read. I look for a lot of books based off of movies that I love, and I give into those urges whenever I see a book on a bookshelf, and I just read it. I just go for it. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope if you're ever in a reading slump, you can go back to one of those techniques and it will help you out. And I would love to know what techniques you guys have. If there's anything that you do that helps you plan out what books you want to read, leave the comments down below. I want to read them. I want to know more. Anything I can do to help myself find more books to read, I love to go for it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. My name is Christian once again. Stay tuned for more content, and I will catch you next time.